Good evening. I'm Doug Kelly, one of the 7 unpaid directors of the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers. Welcome to tonight's Marin Municipal Water District Divisions 2 and 5 Candidate Forum. We'd like the citizens to know that we're not an anti-tax organization per se. We work hard with the county, local agencies, cities, and towns to fix poorly written tax measures before they get on the ballot. And we've had great success. And yes, sometimes we must oppose an unneeded or unfair tax measure. The Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers has also become a leader in Marin for putting on webinars such as tonight's. We put on a number of local, city, and town council candidate forums, as well as the congressional candidate forum. On almost every one of these forums, we've been blessed with the presence of Marin IJ columnist Dick Spotswood to moderate them. And for that, we've always been grateful. We're also grateful to have the talent of Alan Shavitz, who's our webmaster extraordinaire. Tonight, again, Dick is moderating this candidate forum, but before I turn this over to Dick, we have some housekeeping to do. Questions will be posed by Dick with a mix of ones submitted by participants in advance and ones submitted during the webinar. To pose a question, click on the Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen and type in your question. Mimi Willard will keep an eye on those questions and forward any that haven't been asked yet to Dick. She'll also keep an eye on the clock and alert the candidates when their time is running out. Your chat function is disabled today because the meeting organizers are using that channel to communicate with each other. To turn on closed captioning, click on the closed caption on the bottom of the Zoom screen. The video of recording of tonight's webinar should be available within 24 hours. Look for it at our homepage at sensibletaxpayers.org. Please consider donating to Sensible Taxpayers. These events cost us money. We're committed to doing a lot more of these impartially moderated voter education webinars if we have the funds. This month, we have a matching donation challenge that will double all contributions up to $5,000. Here's how to donate. Go to our homepage, sensibletaxpayers.org, and click on Donate. Thank you very much, and it's all you, Dick.
Well, thank you very much, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers Candidates Forum. Today's evening, we're going to focus on candidates running for the Marin Municipal Water District. It provides water services to 191,000 customers in central and southern Marin County. I'm Dick Spotswood, government and politics correspondent for the Marin Independent Journal. This evening, we'll focus on candidates running in the November general election for the MMWD board. It's important to know that the water district is divided into 5 different divisions. This year, board seats in Division 2 and Division 5 are open and will be on your ballot. In Division 2, the candidates are Jack Kenny, nonprofit director, Diane Meyer, mediator and attorney, and Robert Sandoval, a San Rafael Parks Commissioner. Division 2 includes all areas of incorporated San Rafael except Terra Linda and unincorporated areas around San Pedro Road. In Division 5, the candidates are Larry Russell, Water Resources Engineer, Dave Keatley, Director of Operations, and Dawn Matheson, Mother, Engineer, and Artist. Division 5 includes Corona Madera, portions of Larkspur south of Corona Madera Creek and east of Highway 101, San Quentin, Strawberry, Tiburon, and unincorporated areas surrounding Tiburon and Belvedere. All voters will receive ballots that will be mailed in just 21 days on October 7th. To be counted, your ballots must be returned with a postmark dated no later than November 5th. Starting in alphabetical order of Jack Kenny, Diane Meyer, and Robert Sandoval, each has 2 minutes to tell our audience about themselves and why they are running the Marin Municipal Water District Board of Directors. Then we'll do the same for the candidates running in Division 5 in the order of Dave Keatley and then Dawn Matheson. Note that in Division 5, the 5-term incumbent, Larry Russell, has not, despite repeated requests, responded to the request to participate in this forum. That'll be followed after we do the introductions, followed by questions. They'll include questions developed by the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers, myself, and submitted by you, our viewers. There will also be, in the midst of the questions, lightning round questions, which will ask for a yes or no answer. You may follow that with a 30-second explanation for your yes or no answer. We'll start the question in reverse alphabetical order and continue alternating until when each candidate may answer the question first. Each candidate has 1 minute, 15 seconds to answer every question asked. If they believe appropriate, they can give an extra 15-second rebuttal to or after all the candidates have answered. But please, candidates, use that option sparingly. We have limited time tonight. We'd like to finish by 8:30, and we have many, many questions, especially from viewers. We invite more from viewers by using the feature on your screen, which has been described, but at 8:30, we will sign off. Before we do, we'll conclude in reverse alphabetical order so that each candidate has 2 minutes to explain why Marin Municipal Water District 2nd and 5th Division voters should vote for them on the 5th of March. Let's get going, and let's ask the candidates, starting with Jack Heatley, to tell us about yourself and why you're running for the Marin Municipal Water District Board this year, and what your top
I think you meant Jack
if elected.
Kenny. You said Jack Keatley.
Jack Keeley, excuse me, Jack Kenny.
Yes. So go.
Jack.
Hi, I'm Jack Kenny. I'm running for Marin Water District Division 2 Board Director because Marin Water needs a board director with experience related to public land management. Most notably, given there are concerns about fires around the reservoirs, and we need better data for both public awareness about the fire risks around the reservoirs, as well as more reliable data for the water district to use and know how effective their fire mitigation strategies are. And I have direct experience initiating and funding range management studies, as well as other studies around public lands. And Marin Water also needs to continue to advocate for conservation and have conservation be part of how we address drought. Lastly, I am the only candidate of the three running for Division 2 who has attended a single meeting in person this year. And that is indicative that I am better informed and more aware of what's going on at Marin Water now than either of my opponents.
Great. Thank you very, very much. And now the same question to Diane.
Great. And just a note, Dick, that it's Diana.
Diana. Yes,
yeah.
indeed.
I'm Diana Mayer, and I have grown up in Marin. I grew up in Marin. I've lived in Marin almost my entire life. And I have been around long enough that I remember the 76, 77 drought. And so in 2021, when we almost ran out of water, it was a scary experience. Accordingly, I think the major issue in front of Marin is increasing water supply. And it's not an easy endeavor, but it's a critical one. And I think it will require partnerships with many Marin agencies and people. My long-term roots here and my professional background make me uniquely suited for these tasks. Out of college, I went to work for Congressman Henry Waxman. He was one of the most pro-environment and impactful congressmen that really ever served. And he gave me the bug that I wanted to do some kind of public service at the elected level. Although at the time I was working for him, the Republicans then took over the House, and he lost his funding and I lost my job, and then decided to go to law school. But I have always had that interest. And when I was approached about running by some people in the community, everything kind of came together. I have a long history of community service. I grew up here working in the canal. I'm fluent in Spanish. And I'd like to do a better job representing the canal in future decisions about water. I currently run an all-women employment law firm, and I know many of our local businesses. Owning a business, I do know how to make smart financial decisions, and I also know when to quote a older friend of mine, not to be penny wise and pound foolish. I believe that the water board needs to stay out of debt as it was for many, many years prior to last year. And I believe we need to figure out the way to fund supply and wildfire prevention in ways that are transparent and financially sound. And I intend to rely on cost a lot in that endeavor if I'm elected. So I hope they're prepared for that.
Time, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Robert Sandoval, please.
Thanks, Dick. Good evening, everyone. I'm Robert Sandoval. I'm running to represent you on the Marin Municipal Water District Board Division 2 because Marin is my home. I love Marin. I'm passionate about ensuring that we have a safe, secure water supply for our families and our future. I'm a native Californian. I'm the son of Mexican-American and Jewish parents, and I'm now the father of my own young family here in San Rafael in the Peacock Gap neighborhood. My abuelito, my grandpa, was a steel worker, and he worked hard and saved up for the future. He built the foundation for my own father to get a higher education, and for me, really to sit here today. I've inherited that same dedication to long-term thinking and planning in my own life. And I think that that's sorely needed on the board today. The most recent 2021 drought really showed us that we weren't prepared for the future. And as a young father and a lawyer in the financial services industry, I believe I will bring a fresh perspective to the board, focusing on the future of our water supply in the long term and financial management and affordability for all in our community. I have a demonstrated commitment to public service as a former California Deputy Attorney General hired by Kamala Harris, and currently as a San Rafael Park and Recreation Commissioner and a nonprofit board member on the Point San Pedro Road Coalition in East San Rafael. I have a track record of working with and within government and a record of trust and accountability to our community in California and in San Rafael. I believe my passion and commitment to tackling the complex issues ahead of us on Marin Water makes me the right person for the job. Thank you.
Robert, thank you very much. We're now going to shift to the 5th division. We'll start with Dave Keatley.
Great. Thank you, Dick. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everyone at COST for hosting this candidate forum. It's great to be here with you tonight. I think COST does fantastic work in the community that has really given a lot of feedback to leaders. And as Diana mentioned earlier, it's something that I would continue to look to COST for providing guidance as we hopefully are elected office here in the future. I'm running because I think the most pressing issue before us is ensuring that we have an affordable, long-term, and resilient water supply. And as we look for solutions, we have to think differently than we have in the past. We need to bring a fresh perspective. I think the things that have worked before aren't going to work in the future. If they had, we wouldn't have nearly run out of water a couple of years ago. In order to move forward, we need to approach this challenge differently than we have before. We have to meet the future, unafraid to look at all solutions before us and engage the community differently. I think we're at a crossroads here, and we need to think about how we're going to communicate in a way that we have not to look for the solutions that we need with the various stakeholders and community leaders. And I think the community deserves leaders who are willing to make difficult decisions and also be willing to be held accountable for those decisions. I think the time for making easy decisions is over. And at this point, it's my opinion that we need to start moving forward with post haste because we're in a crisis and we need to start to act like it. During the last drought, the district found itself underfunded and paralyzed in its inability to serve community needs. Had the district not approved the rate increases last year, our district would have continued to limp along without any of the resources necessary to address the challenges that we face. I think that experience showed us two things. One, that an underfunded district cannot serve our needs. And then also that I think the price of inaction is greater than the cost of action. As we move forward and look at various solutions to create a long-term and resilient supply, not just to prolong droughts in terms of and shortages of rainfall, but also as we look at other challenges due to climate change, such as wildfire risk in the water district. I think we need to think differently than we have before. And these projects, while costly, are worth pursuing because in the end, we're going to have to make sacrifices that I think most of the community is not willing to make if we choose not to.
Thank you, Dave. Dave, now we're going to move in the 5th division to Dawn Matheson. Dawn, why are you running for the water board and what are your top priorities?
Hi, good evening. My name is Dawn Matheson. I've lived in Larkspur since 1995. I bought my first house in Madrone Canyon with my fiance, who is now my husband, who I met at Cal. I received a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and materials science with an additional major in fine art at Duke University. And for those non-gearheads in the audience, that's very similar to civil engineering, except for everything moves. I then studied computer science at UC Berkeley and worked on a NASA astrophysics project until I got my dream job at Industrial Light and Magic in San Rafael. I worked there for 10 years until I had to resign due to family demands. I had special needs twin boys and a husband who had been disabled by meningitis. One of my sons is autistic, and he is now a senior at UCLA. Yay. And we're almost done. The other is studying computer science at COM and working for a local startup. I chose the water district mainly because of its persistent lack of diversity. Unfortunately, I've been discriminated against many, many times in the engineering world because of how I present. Little blonde women just don't look like engineers. So I think the only way to change that is from the top. I feel driven to understand and solve problems. I would like to apply my skills to long-term public works that can benefit from my perspective and knowledge base. A knowledge base that includes trying multiple puzzle pieces until you find the one that's the right fit. In other words, I'm very experienced with problems without a known defined solution. What's so great about the problems that the water district faces are how many creative approaches have been taken to the same problems all over the world and have really good data to demonstrate success. And to that end, I want to do another push for direct DPR, direct potable water. And that's it.
Thank you, Dawn. We're going to now go on to our further questions and answers. We're going to start in reverse alphabetical order in the second district. Robert Sandoval, Diane Meyer, and Jack Kenny. And then, as you can see, we're grouping the candidates in their own divisions so that the viewers are able to do some comparison. And that'll be followed by candidates in the fifth division. We'll begin with Dawn and then Dave Heatley. Our first question, Robert. Among the other candidates, why are you the best among those running in your division?
Thanks, Dick. A few reasons. I think first and foremost, I come from the community itself. I care about the community. A lot of my support and my endorsements reflect the work I've actually done in San Rafael in service of our community in the district. And additionally, I'm the only candidate in the Division II race with any actual experience within government. I am a Park and Recreation Commissioner currently. I've been that for 4 years. I'm involved in nonprofits in the community like the Point San Pedro Road Coalition. And I think that my service to the community really reflects my commitment to getting things right with Marin Water. And I think it also speaks to my ability to work with a coalition of different stakeholders and be transparent with our problems and solutions here. So thanks.
Thank you. Diana, please tell us why you're the most qualified in your division to be elected among the three candidates.
Well, I think that I have really great relevant experience. I've worked in policy before out of college, as I said, and working for Henry Waxman and worked directly on these issues and saw, how things had to get done. And it wasn't always easy. I also have a lot of experience working in county government. I was a public defender for several years. So I do know how the county operates, and I do know what government service entails and kind of the tricks of working with the county. I also, I know this county like the back of my hand, having grown up here and spent most of my life here. And lastly, I do think that the board really would do well to have some female representation on it. It has had almost no female representation in the past, one woman for several years and then two other women, I think, for just a couple of years. So I'm not sure why that is, but I do think that it's a really important thing that, half of the county is not being represented right now. And there's a lot of studies that show that men and women feel very differently about issues of water and the environment. So I think it would do well to get a little diversity in the gender area. Thanks.
Thank you, Diana. Let's go on to the next district and talk about, oh, no, Jack Kenny, excuse me, Jack Kenny, you're next. And tell us why, of the three running in your division, you're the most qualified.
First of all, I have direct experience with public land management and range studies that would be very helpful for the water district with regards to managing fire risks around the reservoirs. Second, I am the only candidate who has, of the three in this division, who has attended a single board meeting this year. And I, in fact, have attended all of the board meetings since the date of declaring the fact I was running, and almost all of the meetings throughout this year, and think it is very important that whoever is elected has direct experience participating at some capacity in Marin Water District meetings and is as informed as possible about what is going on at Marin Water.
Thank you, Jack. Dave Keeley, you're one of three candidates in your division. Two are here tonight. Tell us why, of the candidates, you are the most qualified that voters should cast their ballot for.
Thank you, Dick. I'm trying to start my video, but I have a note saying my video is unable because the host has stopped it. So if that can be disabled, I can make an appearance. But I'm happy to start talking while
Please start.
I'm sorry, whose video have I?
Dave.
Sorry.
Okay. Dick, in response to the question, I think I'm the most qualified. I think my personal and professional experience have set me up well to serve the community. So I've spent 20 years working in agricultural-based businesses where water planning and long-term strategy are crucial. I've also served as a publicly elected director on the Sierra Lakes County Water District, drinking water and wastewater district, water and wastewater district that serves the Serene Lakes community near Lake Tahoe. Oops, start my video. Perfect. Oops, still saying enable. And up there, we faced similar issues to that of the MMWD. After years of prior mismanagement and poor planning, I was part of a board that had to reestablish a financial base that would adequately serve the community. So I think there's a lot of parallels in those challenges. But above all, I think I'm the right person for this seat because of my collaborative nature. I think through my process of campaigning, I've been reaching out to community stakeholders, community leaders, and elected officials. And what I keep hearing is the water district needs to work better with each of those stakeholders in order to solve the problems that we face. So as a candidate, as well as an elected official, I would bring that collaborative nature to bear, as well as my professional and personal expertise. Thank you.
Dawn, why in the 5th division are you the best qualified candidate?
Well, it depends on what you think is important. My advantage over Larry is that I think Larry doesn't listen well. He has a lot of experience, but he kind of dominates everybody. As opposed to Dave, who is very collaborative and wonderful, but what I see as a really big lack in government is that you don't have enough engineers that are actually making these kinds of decisions. And so the things that concern me, I noticed aren't coming up at the meetings, like design life, because this seems to be something that most politicians don't understand. They kind of think things can go on forever, that engineers are magic, but things have a set design life. And that should be tracked over the time of you're using them. And I think that the current board is doing a really, really good job of kind of catching up with that. But I'd like to see it, and they're working on the report still, but I'd like to see that kind of tracked in real time. Other things that I've noticed and questions that I would ask are, why are we doing several things the way that we're doing them? I wish I could go into depth with that question, but the questions that I am concerned about, I understand failures, and I think that I would be the best on the board because I think I will bring up a unique point of view to the decisions that are being made.
I'm going to ask everyone, please, all the candidates to turn on their video. So that we don't have lapses again where we, lost Dave Keatley and we'll lose somebody else again. We didn't intend it to be that way. And then maybe just mute until you're called upon to speak. Thank you.
Let's go to the next question. Jack Kenny, we're going to start with you. And the order will this time be Jack, Diana, Robert, and then Dave and Dawn on this question. Okay.
And Dick, if you want to turn your video on, that's okay.
It says I can't.
Okay. You keep talking and start talking, and Alan will fix that for you.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask each question the same point. I think it's important. I want you each, if you would be kind enough, to detail your professional employment history and how those experiences at work prepared for you for being an MMWD director. We need to understand professional experience and lessons from working within an organization that they can bring to the water board. Let's start off with you, Jack.
I have professional experience running a nonprofit organization called Point Raised Public Advocacy that have communicated with thousands of individuals about and educated them about the mismanagement of the land in Point Reyes, as well as educating multiple different high schools about what is going on in Point Reyes National Seashore, and having initiated and funded a range management study and a water quality study in Point Reyes National Seashore, and am in the process of initiating and funding a range management study around the watershed, regardless of if I get elected. And it would be helpful for Marin Water to have a board director with direct experience around range management and public land management.
Thank you, Jack. Diana, your professional qualifications that might aid you as a water district director.
I think working in Congressman Waxman's office, I not only learned kind of what is good water policy and how to pay attention to the environment and doing good water policy, but I also learned toughness. And I think that, they used to joke around that Henry was tougher than a boiled owl. And one of my clients once said to me that I was a bulldog dressed up as a French poodle. And I love that comment because I do think that I have a lot of toughness. I can work really hard, and, I can be scrappy when needed. And I think the truth is this is going to be a hard job the next 4 years. There's a lot of hard stuff that needs to happen. We need to make some decisions that aren't going to be popular. And I learned how to do that with somebody who was really fantastic at following his own integrity in the middle of having lots of opinions from others. I will just say too, I think I have a real heart of service, and I learned that at the public defender's office, and certainly working as a owner of a business. I've seen how things have to be looked at holistically, and how important in that endeavor kind of the budget and the financial pieces of that business are in planning for and carrying out initiatives.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Robert Sandoval, the question is, how does your professional and business background aid you as a potential director of the Water District?
Thank you. Yeah, so I started off my career as a California Deputy Attorney General under Kamala Harris, where I represented state individuals and agencies, and in particular represented California State Parks Department. I then went on to become a federal law clerk for 2 federal district court judges in San Francisco. And as a federal law clerk, you are basically an expert of everything that comes across the judge's desk. So you're in a position where you really have to dig deep into unique areas of law, and it can literally be the gamut of different areas of law. And I think what that really shows is I'm adaptable and able to learn fast. And I've done that throughout my career as a lawyer. And after my federal clerkship, I went to the private sector. I worked at the law firm Morrison & Forrester in San Francisco. And I was a senior associate in the litigation group, managing teams on million-dollar cases. Again, a wide variety of litigation, business litigation, consumer litigation, building consensus, managing teams, making sure that we are working within a budget. And now in-house, as an attorney in-house representing one particular company, I'd say I've just continued to develop that ability to manage cases, large matters, million-dollar, multi-million-dollar matters, and financial management and working with the budget is going to be extremely important here. Thank you.
Robert, thank you. We're going to shift over to the 5th division and go to Dave Keatley. Dave, you know the question. If you don't, would you like me to repeat it?
No, thank you, Dick. I've got the question. Thank you. Well, I touched on this a little bit in my previous response, but in my main day job, I work investing in agricultural real estate and agricultural operations in the San Joaquin Valley primarily, but also in Washington and Oregon. And particularly working in California, the water landscape has changed so dramatically in the last few years with the implementation of the State Groundwater Management Act about 10 years ago. And, I think if you had asked me 10 years ago how that would impact policy in the state and what we'd seen, at that time, I would have expected that we'd see about a 30%, 40% fouling of some of the acreage in the San Joaquin Valley. And I think while there's still some fouling coming, it's been impressive to me how much innovation we've seen, particularly in projects like on-farm groundwater recharge, which is part of establishing a project, creating a 40-acre recharge basin, and working with partners in various irrigation districts, as well as federal partners such as the Bureau of Reclamation, to get water and essentially sink it in the ground so that we can continue to use that water in dry years on our farm. So I think there's a lot of interesting innovation that's happening in water. And I think what I appreciate about what we're seeing, even in urban water districts as well, is technology is changing really rapidly. And I think it's important as we look to the future that we have leaders that are on the cutting edge of innovation and wanting to do things differently. Because I think if you can find the right partners and embrace some of the technologies that are emerging, there's ways that we could deliver a better cost of service for our community with greater resilience and ultimately do it in a lower level investment. So I think, there's a few technologies I'm sure we'll touch on tonight. But my experience working in the San Joaquin Valley, I think took a situation that I was initially pretty pessimistic about. And while the challenges, I'm optimistic about some of the future. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Dawn. You are muted.
I'm so sorry. I hate it when that
There you
happens. I think it's important to say that I started my career with minimum wage jobs, which I think there is value in that because it gives you some exposure and experience with different kinds of people. I also went to a really rough public school. But when I went to Duke, one of the classes that I think every engineer should have, and when we visit Cal Poly, I told them this. I said, you should take failures, because that is how failures are very non-intuitive. I can't get into the weeds with it, but they're not intuitive. And so people who have not been schooled in it do not know where to look and where to expect problems. And I would really like to work on wargaming kind of things that can go wrong. What is our redundancy in the system? And, those are questions that I don't think that everybody else has kind of at the top of their list, as well as new technologies, which I love, love, love to read about. So, my experience is, and when I worked at ILM, I'm a firefighter. That's what I do. I solve technical problems that come up quick and on the fly. And so, it's creative problem solving and making sure everybody's happy. And that's, our clients were not exactly easy there. So
Thank you. Time.
Thank you, Dawn. Let's move on to the next question. And we're going to start with this with Diana. Diana, affordability challenges are forcing more and more residents out of their homes in Marin. What specifically would you do that will address this problem while still ensuring a reliable water supply?
Well, I think that Marin Water should do what it can to partner with the various initiatives that are going on right now to increase more housing. And from what I've seen and what I've heard, those housing initiatives are generally much more water efficient than what we currently have. Generally, we're talking about, group housing where we don't have a huge house with a huge lawn that needs to be irrigated. So generally, anytime we're talking about a group of people living together, it's much more water efficient. So I think just making sure that we partner where we can. An example might be what we did with ADUs. When ADUs, we waived connection fees for ADUs in Marin, and I believe with the spirit of trying to cooperate with the direction Marin was going in of increasing housing. Excuse me. So that would be just one example of something that the water board could do. But basically, I think just making sure that we don't stand in the way and that we do what we can to subsidize the efforts to get more affordable housing in this area.
Thank you. Robert.
Thanks, Dick. So I don't think it's fair either to our aging community or our future generations, many of whom are increasingly underrepresented Latinos in the canal, that we approach our problems at MMWD by expecting to just raise rates and put the burden of the costs on them. I've talked about this a lot. If you're a tier 1 user, for example, meaning that you use the least amount of water, half the bill is still fees, not really tied to water usage. So I think that we need to be looking when we do raise raise rates, we also need to be looking at fees. And I think we need to be planning for reasonable rate increases rather than reactive ones. And I think the current board has actually been doing a great job with that one. I also think we should explore how we can tailor our projects so that we're not leaving potential state and federal grant funding off the table. We do have a lot of projects, and I think we just need to continue trying to fund them and be creative with our revenue sources. And then I also think that not necessarily now, but sometime in the future, if there is public support and interest rates are lower, that we should be looking at things like bonds for a lot of these projects that will benefit people in the next 50 to 100 years. I just think it makes sense and it's fair to explore a bond as a solution. And I just want to add that as the grandson of a working class steel worker who really built himself up and saved and supported his family of 7 kids and his wife, that I'm extremely sensitive to affordability issues in our community. And I will really be a voice making sure that we aren't pushing people out of their homes here in Marin.
Thank you, time.
Thank you, Robert. Jack, you're next.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I was just about to do that. Jack, the question basically is affordable challenges are forcing more folks out of their homes in Marin. What would you do to address the problem, particularly from the water rate point of view, while still ensuring a reliable water supply? How do you balance high bills with needing money to pay for more water supply? How would you do that?
First of all, this is the reason to keep conservation as part of how we address drought, given it's always the cheapest way to address drought, costing only a little bit over $3,000 per acre foot, which is far cheaper than all of the other alternatives. Second, with regards to increasing the supply, we need to start with the low-hanging fruit options that are rather inexpensive, including the spillway raises at Bontempi and Nicasio Reservoir and Russian River water that fits within our existing pipe. And the other important fact to remember is increasing the supply is harder than people want to believe. For example, the water district failed to get the 250 acre foot Bontempi Phoenix Lake connection project done for environmental reasons. Just to give a great example of how hard it is to get these projects approved. Nonetheless, keeping conservation as part of the equation is essential for keeping water affordable.
Dave Keatley, your opinion on how to keep water affordable while supplying sufficient water.
Yeah, rates need to be affordable, Dick. And I think, the whole community, all of us included, have felt the rapid increases, the rates in the last year. It was a significant year-on-year increase and will continue for 2 more years. And I think as I've knocked on doors, that's the number one concern I hear from people is probably less in absolute terms what they're paying for water, but how drastically the costs went up. And we had a board over the last 20 years who raised rates a handful of years, and every single time it was double-digit increases. And I think that's challenging because I think it doesn't allow consumers to adapt to that new price signal, right? So in my mind, I think when rates are increased, first of all, we need to be much clearer and communicative with the public about when they're happening. We need to be good fiduciary stewards of the public's resources, ensuring that we're doing it for good reason. And in these last rates, part of that rapid increase was also, essentially just addressing decades of deferred action, right? We're making up for lost ground and repair and maintenance. And that's a big reason that the cost has jumped. So I think moving forward, as we look at additional supplies, I support what Robert said, which is if we're doing a large project, it's an intergenerational project in nature. It needs to be bond financed. And we should look at solutions that help lower the operational cost of water in the future, so that at the end of the day, those rates, which are tied to that operational cost, are things the public can benefit from. On the conservation side, I think one of the challenges we saw with the last board is they pushed conservation. And that's another thing our ratepayer is very sensitive to is our use of water has gone down 25% in the last few years. That's a huge drop. And yet it created a hole in the fiscal situation in the district, right? So I think as we continue to conserve, the challenge we have to balance is our revenues will go down. We need to be able to adjust for that over time. So,
Don, the question basically, how do you balance the need for more water supply with or how would you do it if elected with the need for more water?
Let's talk about 2 inequities that I see right now. The first inequity is with conservation, because conservation is great. We've been doing it since the 1950s. No one should waste water. I agree with all of that. But I think that we're spending a lot. I'd like to find out how much we're spending for the conservation programs for MMWD, because we're getting such a little return for what we're putting in. We had 4,000. The biggest thing was like less than 4,000 flumes, which is painless, to put in. And the problem is that what happens is that when you have to conserve, it's like in Mexico City, it's the lower economic level that's the ones who do most of the conserving, and the other people, they're not feeling any pain. And this, I have this diagram. It shows you like Ross is using the most water still. So conservation does not work for really affluent people because they don't feel it. They don't feel any pain. So what we need to do is increase supply, because I think that's a more equitable solution. The other thing that I found disturbing was about the tiers, because we give single family residences a bigger allowance in tier 1 than we give for people who live in like a condo in multifamily residences. And usually they're the ones that are lower socioeconomic than the people in single family residences. And so why are they not getting as big of an allocation? That doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. We're going to next 4 questions are going to be lightning round questions. They start off, they're basically designed to be answered yes or no, but we're also going to give you 45 seconds to explain your yes or no after you answer the question. Robert Sandoval, you will go first, just to the District Division 2. Robert, then Jack, and then Diana on the question. And then, just so you know, Dave and Dawn will. Dawn, yeah. Dawn and Dave will follow. Okay, here's the question. Do you support expanding Marin's water supply? Yes or no? Let's start with, as we said, Robert.
Yes, 100%. And we've talked a little bit about the ways we can do that. I think expanding reservoir capacity is one that I'm really interested in.
Jack.
Yes, in moderation, I do support increasing the water supply, most notably through spillway raises at Bontempi and Nicasio Reservoir, as well as Russian River water that fits within our existing pipe. I, however, do not support desalination or the Alpine dam raise or the Solahuli dam raise, they are all very expensive. And it's important to remember that because of Proposition 218, there are limits to how much we can do to accommodate lower income constituents having trouble affording living in Marin County.
Diana, do you support expanding Marin's water supply? But you're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, I do support expanding Marin's water supply. I think that 2 years ago, we had clearly what was a mandate from the voters on doing that. And I think there's still that mandate. There's still a lot of concern. What I'd like to do ideally is adopt some kind of short-term and immediate solution. And I'd also really love to see the water district start looking at things like water recycling. So we have a more of a vision for the future and a time where we can imagine being self-sustainable in terms of our water supply.
Dave, do you support more
Yes,
water?
yes, Dick, I do support increasing our water supply. And like the other candidates, I think there are a number of options before us. As I said in my opening statement, I want to make sure we're looking at everything without biases, looking at new technologies. I think not only do we need to increase supply to deal with prolonged droughts, but also for climate impacts such as fire to make sure we have a resilient water supply with some redundancy in the event that we have a fire that impacts our existing reservoirs.
How about you, Dawn? More water?
Yeah, absolutely, for the reasons that I just described. But I think increasing supply is great, but it doesn't work with climate change, because it's like I tried to put in a cistern in my backyard in lieu of my swimming pool, and I did the calculations, and it makes no sense at all in the state of California, or at least up here because of our rain season. It would never ever pay for itself ever because of the long dry season and the amount of capacity that you have. We need to have a recycled component into our water supply.
Great. Next lightning round question. It's going to start with Jack Kenny. Jack, yes or no? Would you support desal as a choice/option for expanding water supply?
As I already said, no, I do not support desalination. It comes with profound environmental impacts and is a very expensive way to approach drought, especially given the ongoing cost of $6,000 per acre foot of water in the
Diana?
And second, I do support gray water reuse and think it's a much better way to get water, increase the water supply without relying on rain.
Thank you. Diana, the
Can you-
question is,
yeah,
yes
can you
or no,
repeat it, please?
as an option, should desal be on the table?
Yes, I think that there's very few things that should not be on the table right now. I think that we need to think about redundancy in our water system, our supply system, and technology is changing. So there are a lot of concerns with desal, but things are changing. The future of Marin water and who we might partner with so that it would make more sense is, who knows what will happen. So I absolutely do not want to see that taken off the table.
Robert, desal.
Yeah, I don't think we have the luxury of not considering desal in the future, at least in the long term. I think that there are a lot of negatives with desal as an option, and the question really becomes, can we address those negatives using technology? And like Diana said, technology is constantly improving. So I do think if there are ways we can address the brine, for example, and do desal in a carbon neutral way, then yes, I would want to see that in the future.
Great. Moving over to Division 5, let's ask that question to Dave.
Okay. Yeah, Dick, I think we have the community value that we have of environmental stewardship is a really important one. And, I want to say I wouldn't look at options that would override that. I think we have to make sure that we have climate goals and stewardship goals that we need to uphold. That being said, I agree, I would look at everything right now and not rule out desal. Not only are we solving for the next few years, we're solving for the next 25 to 50. And I think with the rate of technological change, it's a chance that desal may have lower operating costs and fewer environmental negatives in the future. But I do support right now other solutions like DPR primarily. But I'm open to all options because I think we're going to need them all to get there.
Thanks, Dave. Dawn, desal's the question.
Absolutely not, because it's more expensive and it is more environmentally hostile. And the state of California is giving grants for developing DPR. And so why not do that? And I know that people are worried about PFAS, but there are some solutions to that. And the gray water system, I think, is not a viable idea because it requires twice the infrastructure. You have to run twice the pipes.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Dawn. The next question is going to be another lightning round. And we're going to start this time with Diana. Diana, would you support a new reservoir? Yes or no? Why?
Yes, possibly. I think it's a good idea. And I certainly would prefer to have our supply here and not through conveyance. But so far, what I've seen from watching many board meetings is that it's a very expensive solution, and there's a lot of opposition to it, and for good reason. So I love the idea in theory, and I would need to know the details to say, whether it'd be something I would vote for on the board.
Robert Sandoval.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I agree. I'd want to know more details, though. I think I'd favor. So I guess the answer is no, not with a caveat. I guess I'd like to know more details, and I think for now, based on what I do know and the conversations I've had, I'm more interested in expanding what we have and maintaining what we have.
Thank you. That would lead us to Jack.
I would not support
Additional reservoir.
I would not support building an additional reservoir. First of all, given its financial and environmental impacts. But regardless of whether I support it or not, I don't think matters, given it's very evident that expanding the water supply and extracting more water from the Lagunitas Creek is a lot harder than people want to believe, as has been made evident by the fact they failed to get a 250 acre-foot expansion project approved through the environmental regulations.
Thank you, Jack. Let's go on to the would be Dawn.
With what I know now, and I've also thought that before, when I was investigating before I found DPR, I also think that if you did expand, it's always better to go deeper, because if that's feasible, I'd do the math. It's always about the math, but you always go deeper because that solves a lot of your evaporation problems. So, but no, I don't think it's feasible.
Let's go to a money question.
Oh, Dick, may I have a chance to answer that question as well?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. Yes, of course.
Perfect. Thank you. I would not support a new reservoir. So I think the work that the district has done recently, the new board has done, the new reservoirs are quite expensive. Now, expanding existing reservoirs, I think that is something that we shouldn't take off the table. I think, one thing as we look at comparing those costs with some of the other supply options we've discussed tonight, we need to ensure that the compensation for the private landowners whose lands will be affected are part of that solution. But at the end of the day, I think we need to consider that as an option and compare it against others. Though, like everyone else, I would want to kind of weigh each option against each other before deciding on that as the optimal.
Thanks, Dave. This is a money question.
Dick, people are asking you to speak up. There's a problem with your microphone. You just need to get closer to it or louder.
What's that, Mimi?
Closer to your microphone or louder.
Turn it louder. Okay.
Okay.
The next question is a money question, and it's we're going to start with Robert Sandoval. Robert, and we'll go down the line as we've done. Robert, what is Marin Municipal Water District's unfunded pension liability? And what's the annual interest payment on that unfunded liability? So it's a very technical question as to unfunded pension liabilities of Marin Water.
Yeah, I think I saw that question earlier. I'd have to look it up. I don't know it offhand. Sorry about that.
Let's then go on to Jack Kenny and then Diana.
I do not have an answer to that question either, like Robert.
Diana, have you been following the pension story at MMWD?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. And this is from a viewer, by the way. What is Marin Water's unfunded pension liability, and what's the annual interest payment on that unfunded liability?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Sometimes I don't know is the best answer, but I'm going to continue that with this would be Dawn and then Dave.
I don't know, but I do know at one of the meetings, they said that that was actually much smaller than people are seeing, but you know, I haven't seen the numbers.
Okay, and Dave, any idea?
Yeah, the water district's contribution to pensions is about $110 million. And I think right now at the pay down rate that we're at, which I unfortunately don't remember the exact number, but I'm gonna say it's in the neighborhood of $5 million. We're looking at a 2045, 2050 payoff. And, you know, so I think there are opportunities, you know, again, I think it all comes back to rates. But if as a community, we want to value paying that unfunded liability off sooner, you know, we can save a lot of money by paying more each year. But again, I think given the various projects and costs that the district is facing, I'm not sure if that's the best use of current funds.
We're going to start with Jack this time. Jack, this is not a lightning round question, just regular traditional question, huh? What actions would you, as a director, recommend that Marin Water take to ensure that we have a reliable water supply that is resilient to drought, wildfire, and earthquake? Jack Kenny.
Expand upon our Russian River water extraction, given the Russian River has far more water than the Lagunitas Creek. Raise our spillways, as I already mentioned, and lastly, expand our gray water system and put more efforts into getting state and federal grants to help fund gray water projects.
Thanks, Jack. Diana, you understand the question? It's what would you recommend the water district do to have a reliable is the underlying word, supply that is resistant to drought, wildfire, and earthquake?
Well, that's why ultimately I think we really need to look at something like water recycling. We need to anticipate the possibility that as climate change gets worse and worse, we're not going to be having rain in any kind of measurable amount that's going to work if we don't have some kind of ability to make our own supply. So that's why I feel really strongly that we need to at least start pushing forward in that direction. In the short term, I think probably, you know, I'd have to agree with Jack that conveyance seems like the least bad alternative as opposed to a great alternative. But I'd really like to see us move towards some kind of self-sufficiency.
Thanks, Diana. Robert.
Could you re-ask the question?
Sure, of course. What actions would you recommend if you were elected to the water board to ensure that we have a reliable water supply that is resilient to drought, earthquake, and wildfire?
Got it. So I think I would mimic kind of what Diana said. I think we need to focus on things like recycled water and direct potable reuse to be more sustainable. I also think that we should be constantly looking at our infrastructure and our water system to address any single points of failure that the people on the ground, engineers and employees of MMWD identify, and we should be planning and budgeting to address those single points of failures.
Thank you. We'll go on to it looks like it's going to be Dave, and then Dawn.
I'm sorry, Dick, will you repeat the question? Just make sure I answer. Thank you.
What will you do if you're elected to create a reliable water supply, a sustainable water supply in the event of drought, earthquake, and wildfire?
Yeah, I think this is where redundancy is important. That's where, you know, as we touched on earlier, I think the current existing reservoirs are prone to risk of wildfire. And that's why I think we need an option in the long run, such as desal or DPR, so that we have a redundant source in the event that wildfire impacts that supply. Echoing Robert's comments, I think, you know, we look at the breakpoints along the system. You know, I think that the district has been doing a good job with seismic retrofits and upgrades. I think that needs to continue. We need to continue to support that work. But for me, it's resilient. The resiliency of supply is redundancy in supply.
Don, in some way, it's the big question. What are you going to do if you're elected to guarantee a resilient, guaranteed water supply in the event of drought, wildfire, or earthquake?
I'm really glad that somebody asked that question because that was something I thought about. And like I mentioned before, I think a little wargaming would be great. But the other thing that I'm in the NRG, the neighborhood response group, I'm a block captain, so little NRG. But they do something that's really great, which is twice a year when the time changes, we all get together and we have the whole neighborhood put out their signs. And I think that we should schedule normal check-ins with the other county departments like every 6 months or every year, because something that really worries me, like one thing I can just imagine happening is that if we had a fire and somebody dropped fire retardant, some firefighters like drops fire retardant on our reservoirs and then costs us millions of dollars to clean up, I can just see that happening so easily because of lack of communication. So, they're doing that now, but they don't have it scheduled. It's like a 5-year plan. I don't think they finished it all. And it's not scheduled to kind of circle back and do it every year. And I really think that communication line needs to happen. It works great with NRG and it helps it's other people that have ideas like, did you ever think of this when this happens?
Thank you, Don.
Thank you, Don. The next question is a very different field than we've been talking about, recreation. It starts with a yes or no question, but this is not a lightning round. Feel free to take the time you need to explain your answer as you would any other question. Yes or no? Are you in favor of opening more trails on MMWD land to mountain bikes, e-bikes? How about that? Or what restrictions would you impose on those bikes going forward? So basically the question is recreational lands and your belief as the appropriateness of e-bikes and mountain bikes on additional trails. Let's start this one off with Diana.
I would support it. Again, with lots of caveats. I think that, we just got this pilot study going. And so we need to make use of the results from that study. That's going to give us a lot of information about how we can do that responsibly, how it would work, as opposed, like, do we have certain trails that are just for mountain bikes, certain trails that are just for hikers, and how we do it. But all things being equal, yes, I absolutely support having more access. And I think that e-bikes, if we're going to have mountain bikes, e-bikes should generally be included in that as well. It's going to allow for people, say, with a disability, to also get up on the mountain. And as long as we're not talking about I forget what they're called, but the super motorized ones, the ones that have basically are electric to kind of have like another gear on them, essentially. I think that absolutely those should be looked at as on the mountain, if the results are such that we think we can protect our trails adequately in doing so.
Robert, you're next. If you'd unmute yourself, the question basically is, what's your position on bikes and e-bikes, mountain bikes and e-bikes on the watershed? Robert Sandoval.
Thanks, Dick. Yes, I would support access. I support the 2 pilot programs that the board recently approved. And I think we need to support equal access to our beautiful Mount Tam that we have. But I'd like to see, like Diana said, the results of the pilot program. And what I would look at is not only impact to the environment, but also the safety of, even though they are a minority, safety of equestrians. I think we should keep an eye out for safety concerns as well. And then we can kind of assess with all the information before us if we think that there should be more segregated trails or not.
Great, thank you very much. Jack, the question is mountain bikes or e-bikes on the watershed?
That this pilot program is a great place to start and give us information about the impacts allowing cycling on these trails has with regards to safety and the conditions of the trails, and then reassess after. There's nothing better than having data available to tell you the impacts of something like this.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Dave Keatley, and once again, cycling.
Yep. Great, Dick. Well, I mean, I think, again, we're fortunate that we live in Marin where we do. I mean, there's what I appreciate about our community is there's a legacy of environmental stewardship that I think is important that we uphold. And historically, the district's been a big part of that in its 100+ year history. The district has always maintained it's important to ensure that water quality is preserved, as that's kind of one of the bigger mandates of the district. So what I appreciate about the pilot study that was approved is I think it balances both those things as we look to expand trail access to bikes and bikes over the next 2 years. So like everyone else on this panel, I want to understand the success of that program before expanding trails, but let's let the science do the talking. At the end of the day, I think where the board had failed in prior years, kind of going back to 2010, is there was a lot of back and forth, and in very little cases did they look at data to understand whether to expand access or not. So what I appreciate about what this board has done is they put a pilot study in place. We have a chance to study it. And again, if expanding trail access is consistent with our goals of preserving water quality and environmental stewardship, which I think it can be, then I would support more access.
Thank you.
Great. Dawn, the question is cycling on the watershed.
So that's kind of a hikers, horses against bikes is what I've seen.
And don't forget the equestrians.
Yes, that sounds much better. I got no dog in this fight or hunt, but I appreciate nature from a distance, but I'm not happy about the way that the pilot program was run, because what I think there are two things that I think should have happened. One thing I think should have happened is they should have put out signs, at least in the parking lots, discussing, this is a pilot program, and put a QR code. If you have something to say about it, say it, and then put signs along the proposed paths. And they did not do that. And I have friends who go there every week, and I never go with them. And they were really upset when they found out about the pilot program when I told them about it just a couple weeks ago. But the other thing is that the primary mission of the water district is clean, resilient water. It is not recreation. And so that means I think the ratepayers should have a say in whether they want to pay for that, because you have more enforcement, you have more maintenance. And I think that we should have sent out a snail mail vote for every household. And this is Marin, they love spending on parks. They love, nature. They very well might have said, yeah, we totally would have bikes in the watershed. But I think that it should have gone to them, because as a ratepayer, I would have liked to have had a say about it, because I grew up in a place that had the worst. Okay.
Dawn, thank you very, very much. I'm going to ask a question now, and let's start off with Robert, just to let you know that you're going to start off. It's a different topic entirely. We're back to rates and money. What's your plan to bring Marin Water's rate increases back in line with residents' income growth? I presume that means the cost of living. Note that MMWD instituted substantial multi-year rate hikes during the high inflation spike of 2022. So the basic question to all of you is, what's your plan to bring Marin Water rate increases back aligned with the cost of living growth?
Thanks, Dick. I think I spoke to this briefly earlier. I'd like to just see a couple things: transparency with the community about rates, and more reasonable rate increases over time. And I would just say allegorically, like I wasn't alive back then, but in the 70s, is a similar drought. Then in response, a lot of the neighboring water districts started increasing rates annually according to CPI, and MMWD didn't. And so fast forward to 2021, and we were kind of alone in our problems, financial and otherwise. And so I'd like to see some reasonable rate increases over time. And I think you can just tie it to CPI, for example.
Okay. Jack Kenny.
We should investigate how other parts of the government have raised their rates over the years, such as the sanitary district, and consider copying another platform that seems to have worked effectively in order to avoid any dramatic rate raises such as what we just experienced in the future. It's also important that we educate the community about how rate raises pay for pipe replacements, which reduce the amount of water that is lost to leakages, which ultimately saves constituents money and helps increase the water supply in theory without having to do any projects.
Thanks, Jack. Diana, the question again is how do we bring the rate increases in line basically with the cost of living increases?
Well, my understanding of why we had such a big jump in the rates was that we were making up for about, 10, I think 12 of the 14 years before that not having raised rates, which, we were just delaying really what we needed to do to be responsible, in my opinion. And so what happened is we had this huge jump. I don't think that's anticipated again. And I think that having inflation, having raises that are in line with inflation would be the responsible thing to do. And I think the way we balance that is, there's federal funds or state funds we can apply for. We have rental income at the water district that we could probably increase. And finally, I think if we're looking, I think bonds is not a horrible idea if we're talking about using them to invest in the future. I think it's one thing to use bonds to pay for things that we're doing now, and we should have other ways. But if we're talking about investments for the future, I think doing bonds smartly could also be a possibility to keep those rates not going crazy.
Don, the question is how to keep rates in line with people's cost of living.
Well, first I want to say when the rates were raised, as a ratepayer, I was really upset because I found out about this rule where over half the ratepayers have to return a snail mail thing that says we don't want a rate increase. I mean, that's just, you might as well just say, you don't bother, because like to get 50% of the ratepayers to actually return a postcard is not feasible. So I don't even know why they have that rule. But I do think that what we should do is try to get some of those sweet DPR grants that the state is offering and any other grants we can, and then do the math. And if we don't need the money, then we can raise the rates a little slower than, as we go on, when we see where we are.
Dave.
Yeah, Dick, I think it's important that we learn from the recent drought, right? I mean, these significant cost increases, these 4-year increases, are a result of a lot of decisions that had been made poorly. And during the drought, we had kind of this perfect storm where there was no drought level pricing, so use continued. There was conservation, so 25% of our water supply was conserved, but that drove down revenues. And then essentially the district was living off of reserves and drained reserves from $60 million to about $10 million, draining about $1 million in reserves a month over a couple-year period. And so, that's what the rate increases are helping rebound from. Essentially, when you live off reserves, you're neglecting your infrastructure, right? So I think that the board did make a hard decision to increase those rates well out of line with inflation, because that was making up for that lost time and the lost finances. So I think, as everyone else here said as well, I do support kind of regular increases connected to CPI, but we really need to earmark what that money is going for and be very clear with the public about what it's going towards. And if we have this 20-year backlog in repair and maintenance, we need to address that. And we need to make sure that as we're making investments for the future, we're trying to minimize the operational cost to kind of prevent that current cost burden. But we're essentially in a hole because of how the board had been operating for the prior years, particularly during the drought.
Thank you, Dave. The other question is, we're now going to go to employee benefits and director benefits. Will you pledge to end the water district paying for private health insurance for Medicare eligible retirees and board members? At present, if you're a retiree or a board member, you do not have to necessarily go on Medicare. You can stay on the private insurance plan, which is more expensive. So do you pledge to end that if you're elected? And the question starts with Jack Kenny.
Oh, could you ask the question again? I was a little bit
Yes. Right now, if people retire from the water board or are directors who retire from the water board, they are given lifetime health insurance in many cases. There is no requirement that they join the Medicare plan, some of us belong to. They can stay on the water board's plan, which is far more expensive than the Medicare plan that most Americans over 65 and over pay. Do you believe that the water board should change their policy and basically say, if you retire at age 65, you got to go on Medicare?
Given other government officials in part-time positions do not get this health care, I do not think the Water District Board directors should receive this special deal. However, at the same time, I think it's important to assert that the amount of money that this costs the water district is futile compared to all the other issues at hand and is possibly overemphasized with regards to its actual impact on our constituents.
The question goes next to Diana, and it applies not just to water board members, but to employees who retire across the board. If they are eligible for Medicare, should they go on Medicare, or should they stay on the more expensive, be allowed to stay on the more expensive water district health plan?
Well, I will say it's a little bit hard to feel like I can answer this question with a lot of conviction, just because I don't know all the I don't know that many details of their plan. I don't know what kind of rate they get. I mean, they may get an incredibly inexpensive rate. And you know, and so with that caveat, I would say off the top of my head, certainly seems like a good idea. From what I hear, Medicare is quite a good plan, and given how much we are looking around for sources of funding, it's certainly something that I would say we should look at. But really hard to weigh in again without being more informed about it. It sounds good. Let's say that.
Thank you, Diana. Robert Sandoval.
Thanks, Dick. Yeah, that's actually a good question. We haven't gotten much of so far. I would say two things. With regard to the MMWD employees, I think, I support the healthcare that unionized workers have bargained for. And so I think that answers that aspect of it. But I do think it's a little bit different for board members, and I'd be more interested to see the history there with the use/potential abuse of healthcare by board members in the past. And I don't think that's as necessary as supporting the healthcare of our MMWD employees.
Dave Keatley.
Yeah, I agreed. I think for retired employees, this was the promise we made. They deserve the healthcare they're getting. I want to point out that under the new union contract, new employees are not going to get retirement healthcare benefits. So I think it's insensitive that future board members, current or future board members, should accept those benefits. If I were elected, I would not take healthcare.
And Dawn Matheson.
I agree. I mean, I think that seems like kind of an extreme benefit. I don't know many other offices at this level that get that extreme benefit. And as many know, our incumbent has been taking advantage of that for many years. And I don't think that's industry standard, but I do believe that for the employees, if that's what we bargained, that's what we do. And that's kind of the trade-off. We get people to work for us because maybe there's lower wages, but they get better benefits. And those are the deals we made back then.
We're starting to wind down, folks. I just want to emphasize to our viewers that we've clumped the questions because there are two different districts that the folks are running in. Dawn and Dave are running in the 5th district, and along with Larry Russell, who's not present, and Diana, Jack, and Robert are in the 2nd district, different areas. 2nd's mostly San Rafael. The 5th district is Tiburon, Larkspur, Corte Madera. Just understand why we've done that. And if you really want to see the details, the Marin Municipal Water District website has a very precise map on it to show you where you live and what district you are in. As we start to wind down here, I have a question. We're going to start this one off with Diana. It's a pretty open-ended question, but what changes do you propose to make the water district's rate structure more fair and affordable? Diana.
I think that I think that one of the things that we could do is, we actually have really good subsidy programs at Marin Water, and there's a lot of them for different kinds of needs. I think that could be enhanced even more, and those obviously have a major impact on rates for that particular person. I also think there's places where fixed fees could be, like we did for the capital fee. We then amended that fee and had it be a fixed fee, but it was based on things like water usage. So there was transparency around it, and there was control over how high that was. So that would be another way to, have those fees be more equitable, and more transparent. Those rates be more equitable and more transparent, and allow people to have a little more control over their water bill at the end of the day.
Robert, the question is, if you're elected, how would you go about making the water rates change so that you believe they'd be more fair and equitable?
Thanks, Dick. I'd like to focus less on fee increases and more on usage. And I think we can do more to communicate and expand our rebate programs. I was happy to see at the San Rafael Chamber Business Showcase that MMWD had a table, and they were talking to people about things like custom rebates for businesses. I think that's a great idea, and I think we can do more like that to encourage conservation and development of our infrastructure.
Great. Thank you, Robert. And let's go to Jack.
I think it's very important that Marin Water emphasizes having future rate raises be as focused on water fees and minimize the amount of flat fee raises, given flat fees disproportionately impact or very negatively impact low-income constituents and do not motivate conservation, unlike water fee increases. It is also important to note, though, that Proposition 218 does place some limits upon to what degree we can favor lower income constituents.
Great. Thank you, Jack. And Diana. Oh, you've done, Diana, have you answered this one? Yes. Let's go to Dave. Excuse me.
Thank you, Dick. I think the tiered system offers an opportunity to look at more fair and equitable rates. As Jack mentioned, Prop 218 does place some limits on that. Ultimately, Prop 18 is concerned with cost of service. And so as we look to the future and we look at adding additional supplies that may have different costs, there may be an opportunity to look at ways that we structure rates that, again, I think it's important that we do incentivize conservation, right? So while Prop 218 does put a little limit on that, I think there's an opportunity to continue to conserve while we invest in a resilient supply as well. And I think at the end of the day, if that additional supply will allow us to use the tiered system a little bit differently to make sure that lower income, lower end users are able to benefit from more savings than they do today, and also factor conservation in the mix.
Okay, Dawn?
Well, I already told you about my feelings about the tiers. The other thing that always bugged me was that it's based on single family residence, but it has nothing to do with how many people are actually living there. It seems like a person should have an allocate, it should be per person. And because all of our neighbors were in these big houses, but there were only 2 of them, and we had 5 people in this house. So, but the other thing is that I think that a big thing right now is fees, like added to your bills, and I would like to see those more amortized over, the usage and less flat fee. I think that's a really good direction to go.
This is going to be our last question before we do your final comments, and I'm going to start with Robert Sandoval. Robert, is the Marin Municipal Water District doing enough presently to make the watershed fire safe in the event of wildfire? If not, what would you advocate they do additionally?
Thanks, Dick. I think I haven't heard that they're not doing enough. I know we have a plan in place to mitigate fire risk, and I think we're doing a great job with that, and we'll continue to do a great job with that in the future.
I must add, it's often been said you can never do enough in wildfire prevention. So that's
Yeah.
always the quandary.
Dick, if I could add one thing though, I actually think what isn't talked about enough is actually the earthquake risk. And the fact that, you know, if we do have a massive earthquake, which I think is a little bit more costly and difficult to prepare for, that it'll probably lead to wildfires as well. So that's something that I would raise that isn't really talked as much about.
Right. Thank you very much, Robert. Jack Hetty. Are they doing enough for wildfire? And since you can never do enough, what would you do?
First of all, we need to start having range management studies performed around the reservoirs, especially Kent Lake, which in fact I'm going to make sure happens whether I get elected or not, given I'm connected to UC Santa Barbara Environmental Science Department, who are interested in performing these studies, given it will give the public information about the risk of fire risk, as well as let us know how effective our strategies in place are. And depending upon what the statistics indicate with regards to fire risk, we most likely will need to start funding it more extensively and putting more efforts into mitigating fire mitigation strategies.
Thanks, Jack. Diana, the wildfire question is the one at the time right now.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing quite enough. I think we're in the right direction, but there was a really thoughtful and informed presentation to the board recently about pathway modeling and how the idea of defensible space, a lot of that defensible space concept, we focused on the watershed, which is good. But what this person was saying and what the studies show is that really the critical thing is having defensible space around homes, or the point where the urban structures meet the open space or the watershed, if you will. In other words, where the fire would come off the mountain essentially and start burning homes and structures. And there's a lot more that can be done there. That he said would handle about 60% of kind of the problem of the negative impacts of a wildfire. So I think we could be doing a lot more in our neighborhoods, and I think we could be doing a lot more to mandate those kinds of changes, and you know, to not have the focus be exclusively on the watershed as a defensible space area.
Great, thank you, Diana.
Hmm.
Dave Keatley, what about
Yeah, yeah. Historically, I don't think the district has done enough, Dick, but you know, that has changed in the last year. I believe so. There's a couple things. One is I think there's a real opportunity for Marin Water to partner with other agencies to secure grants and do work together, and that happened this last year. I believe Marin County Fire secured some $2 million in funding that helped go towards some of the efforts that have happened on the watershed. And I think the watershed did clear it was about 1,500 acres they treated this year in terms of fuel reduction, fire breaks, clearing broom, things of that nature. So, you know, with 22,000 acres, we're kind of on a 15-year cycle of treating the land. So I think given the fact that right now there's so much risk with the reservoirs we have being our only source of water, my view is we need to accelerate that effort and get to a cycle where we're getting through that quicker than in 15 years.
Don, the question relates to what you would suggest to enhance fire mitigation on the watershed.
First of all, I disagree about earthquakes being trickier to prepare for than fire. I think that they're much easier to prepare for. But like I said before, I think we should be having, you know, we should have it scheduled to kind of touch base with the rest of the groups. And something that's really bothers me about fire prevention and firefighting is that it just seems so crude still. Like we're still using the same tools that we use, you know, forever. So I would like to just watch and see what new technology is coming out for firefighting. I mean, that's all we can do, right? We can just investigate that. But that's something that's been really bugging me for a really long time. It's like, this seems so crude. But the other thing is, like in the gaming out strategy, let me give you a for instance. Let's say we had a big fire. One of the things, like when you have an earthquake here, you're supposed to turn off the source to your house, because that way you can use the water in your water heater, if you have a tank water heater, as a water supply, a clean water supply, until you find out if the water's been tainted. But one thing we could do is be putting up breaks, gates between, like if there's a fire, because we've got all these really little skinny tributaries that go down into the bigger basin. And it seems to me like that those are really places where you'd have fire, where stuff would be falling in and it all be coming down into the bigger basin. So if you could.
Thank you, Dawn. This is time for closing comments right now. We're going to give each of you a minute and a half to tell the voters in your division why you should, or why you have earned their vote and why should they cast their vote for you. It's your plea for their vote, basically. And we're going to do it in a complete reverse order. We're going to do the 5th division before the 2nd division. And we're going to start with Dawn Masterson and then followed by Dave Keatley. And then we'll go into the 2nd division and I'll announce those folks too then. But Dawn, why should they cast their vote for you?
Okay, I'm running for the Water Commission because I have the experience and the skill set that I feel is lacking in the current board. I'm running for the Water Commission because I'm a gender that I feel is not being represented on the current board. Diversity does make a difference. The people I hang out with in Marin are different than the people the rest of the board hangs out with, and their points of view need to be entered into the equation as well. My point of view and my approach to problem solving is a little different than the current board. I've listened to a lot of closing statements in my brief tenure as a candidate, and there's this word consensus that keeps coming up every time. And consensus is a lot easier to obtain when the decision makers are all from similar demographic and jobs. If elected, I look forward to getting to know the people from the ground up who work in water, that we take for granted until something awful happens and we start feeling some pain. I've been a firefighter all my life. Something I'm really good at is asking questions about potential failures and lost efficiencies in the system. They really bug the hell out of me. I think the current board, if they bug the other board members too, and the current board. I've heard them ask really good questions to consultants on everything from rate tiers and connection charges to the bicycle pilot program, but my questions were not the same. My ideas were not the same. I hate taxes like every other American, but I don't want to live in a world without the social engineering supported by those taxes. That being said, they have to be used as judiciously and predictably as possible. We need to do better on communicating to the public what to expect and why to expect it. We need to coordinate better with the various, okay. Is that time?
Thank you very much. And also in the 5th division is Dave Keatley. Dave, why should the voters cast their one vote for you?
Yeah, thank you, Dick. I mean, I believe we need fresh perspectives and a collaborative spirit in order to solve the problems that we face. It's my view that the best solutions come from engaging a lot of different stakeholders. I think every perspective is valuable, and that hasn't in our district. I feel like it's been a long time since that input has been sought out. The board has some very tough decisions ahead of it in the next few years. It's important that we break from the past and look to the future differently than we have before. I think my professional and personal experience have set me well up to serve this community, and I'm unafraid of the challenges that we face. I'm committed to working together with community leaders and stakeholders that together we can roll up our sleeves and solve for the water future that we want. One where we've mitigated the risk of running out of water due to prolonged drought or from other impacts of climate change that we've talked about tonight. I think this is important, that this is a challenge that we have to rise up to. We've inherited this incredible legacy from those before us in Marin, and it is our duty to ensure that future generations have that same benefit. And that's where, in my mind, we're solving for a long-term solution here. We're looking for the next 25 to 50 plus years in Marin. It's been great to speak to this group tonight. Thank you very much for COST for putting together this candidate forum. And I want to say, as a father of a young family looking to the future and representing other young families in Marin, I think this is an important role and one that in solving for this water crisis is one of the greatest challenges we face in the county. Thank you.
Well, Dawn and Dave, for the 5th district voters, I thank you for running. In the 2nd district, San Rafael Centered, we have 3 candidates. In this order, they'll give us the reason why you, the voter, should cast your sole ballot, or your sole vote for them. Robert Sandoval will go first, Diana Meyer will go second, and Jack Kennedy will have the last word.
Thanks, Dick. As a father of a young family, looking ahead at the legacy that we leave our kids, I can see no more critical issue than how we plan for an affordable, reliable, and safe water supply in the future. And I think I bring several important qualities to the table that are unique here. So first, I'm willing and creative. These are complicated issues that we face, but I do believe that they're solvable if we are willing to think creatively if we ask the right questions, and if we make some tough decisions. Second, I represent the next generations of young men and women who are moving into Marin and starting families, as well as the growing number of Latino citizens living in Marin County. We need diversity of thought and perspective on our boards, and I can use my lived experiences to be a better representative to all of us in San Rafael. And third, I have a track record of public service, experience of accountability, of building trust in the community. I know what it means to be in service of the community, and I'm committed to working collaboratively with the board, with MMWD staff, and with the community to get things done. And to that end, I would just encourage anyone listening, if you disagreed with me or agreed with me tonight, reach out. Let's talk. I'm open. My website's sandoval.marinwater.com. And I just want to thank you all for allowing me to speak here tonight.
Robert Sandoval, thank you. Diana Meyer, why should they cast their vote for you?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to have a real groundswell of support behind my candidacy. I've got 4 out of the 5 supervisors endorsing me, and all of the current water board members are endorsing me. And I think that's because of the relevancy of my skills. You know, as an attorney dealing with very complex issues, you get very good at taking a lot of information and complicated information, distilling it down and having to make decisions, sound decisions quickly. I'm also a professional mediator. I think the board can really benefit from that skill because I know how to get things done. And, I've grown a very, very successful business in Marin, but I've done it without burning down the house. I've done it. I've gotten things done while still really building a culture in my business that is really an incredibly loving, trustful, or incredibly trusting, positive culture. And I think that will serve the board well. I also wanted to just say one thing too about one of my answers, which was because I misunderstood that we were talking about sort of going back retroactively and taking benefits away from the employees. So I think that, we need to think about what the employees have versus what the board of the directors have. But I do want to say one thing, because I don't think anyone said this tonight. And am I at time?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just say quickly, I do think we need to think about having this a directorship position be something that people that are not high income can do. And that means giving benefits to those folks. So thanks.
Thank you, Diana. And Jack Kenny, you have the last word.
The board could use a director who has direct experience with public land management, given the importance of fire mitigation around the reservoirs. We also do need to continue advocating for conservation as part of how we address drought, and the board needs someone who has attended public meetings in person beforehand and has direct experience being at meetings. Lastly, I do offer an element of diversity, as I see my 2 opponents have talked about a lot, and that is I am neurodivergent, and people who are neurodivergent have better peripheral acuity than the general population and are in theory better equipped to see ways to address political issues that are maybe a little bit outside the box.
Thank you, Jack. And you had the last word. This concludes the Marin Coalition for Sensible Taxation's Marin Municipal Water District Forum. Thank you. People don't realize how hard it is to run for office. Thank you. Here's Mimi Willard, the president of COST, to give you a few thoughts. Good night, everybody.
Very quickly, I want to thank all of the candidates and Dick Spotswood tonight for joining us, and Alan Shavitz, our webinar administrator, all of them for their hard work, and also Doug Kelly, who helped organize this forum. Please understand that the work we do is not free to produce, and I hope that you will consider making a donation at on our homepage, sensibletaxpayers.org. As Doug mentioned before, this month we are really excited to have a matching challenge donation that will double your contributions up to a total of $5,000. And that funds all kinds of communications with the community and forums like this. Finally, I want to mention that the video of this event will be posted on our homepage, we expect by the end of the day tomorrow, if all goes well. And the Division 2-1 for the supervisor race, which we held that webinar last night, is already up, and you can find it on our homepage. Finally, I want to thank you, the voters, for watching this, for submitting great questions, and for participating in our democracy. Thank you all.